What's up, y'all? I'm Will here with Schedulefly, and this is the Restaurant Owners Uncorked podcast, one of the highest rated hospitality podcasts in the world, brought to you by us at Schedulefly. We provide a very simple web-based restaurant employee scheduling software backed by legendary customer service. If you're on pencil and paper or Excel, or you're on some software with tons of bells and whistles and features you don't need or use, Schedulefly is the perfect place for you. Easy to use, point, click, and go, and we'll take great care of you. Schedulefly.com, free trial, check it out. Hey, what's up, y'all? This is a really cool episode with Jeff Brock. Jeff founded Hargett Hunter, and he's out of Raleigh, North Carolina, but luckily got to have him in studio for this episode. He's here in Charlotte for a few days. We have talked multiple times. We were introduced by our mutual friend, Dave Query from Big Red F out in Boulder, Colorado, several years ago. Jeff is an incredible dude. Hargett Hunter invests in growing concepts, typically ones that have around 5 or more locations, up to maybe 40 or 50 locations. And he's been doing this for 25 years, so they find great concepts and invest in those concepts to help them grow. Just such a freaking great dude. We could have talked for another 3 hours, and I know that Jeff and I will spend many more hours in the future talking, hopefully even on camera again. But this is an incredible episode. Dude knows so much about this industry, and it was really fun listening to and learning about how he and his team decide the types of concepts to invest in and what they bring to the table. So great episode. More episodes coming soon. Thank y'all so much. We love you. Give us a rating, give us a star, give us a comment, whatever you want to do. It helps more people find this. We appreciate you. See ya. Today's episode is brought to you by Webstaurant Store, the ultimate destination for restaurant pros. Whether you're launching a new cafe or prepping for the holiday rush, we've got you covered with top-notch equipment and everyday essentials, all at unbeatable prices. And right now, you can score $50 off your order of $250 or more when you use this code, WebSave50. All together, all one word, all caps, WebSave50 at checkout. Again, that's WebSave50. WEBSAVE 50. But act fast, because this deal ends December 31st. Visit webstaurantstore.com to keep your kitchen running strong. Here we go. In Everybody Studios here in Charlotte. We've talked a few times, but finally got to meet in person. Jeff, go ahead and just introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Brock. Food and beverage financier, I guess, for over 25 years.
Nice.
Originally from the state of North Carolina, and after a big old circle, I've been back in Raleigh now for almost 15 years. Time flies.
Restaurant financier for 25 years. So, and you grew up in Tarboro.
I did. Eastern North Carolina. Family's originally from New Bern, grew up in Tarboro.
Okay, fam. So for like the 99% of people that are listening to this that are like not familiar with Eastern North Carolina, tell us where Tarboro is.
Oh my goodness. They'll even laugh when I say it's in between Rocky Mount, Greenville, and Wilson.
Yeah, like
it's pretty close to I-95 in northeastern North Carolina. As you know, Eastern North Carolina is a very unique place. So when you say you're from Eastern North Carolina, it has a strange meaning.
It does. It does. It means that you probably know a lot of people from a lot of different towns, and I mean, I've got some good buddies from that part of the world. It's a great part of the world. Good people, and
great people.
So speaking of good people, you and I were connected like, I don't know, 3 years ago or 2 years ago by Dave Query at Big Red F out in Boulder, Colorado, and I've known Dave for a really long time, and I remember he emailed us and said, you guys should know each other, and but he said Jeff is the real deal. There are a lot of I'll paraphrase, but like there are a lot of sharks out there, but he's the real deal, a really good person. And Dave, I can tell you, I've known him long enough. He's a good judge of character, and he's also very willing to call somebody out if he thinks they're full of it. So, passing that test is a great thing. And I remember you told me that really meant a lot to you to hear that your mom had raised you to always, protect your reputation and treat people right and live by the golden rule or something to that effect. And that meant a lot. But I remember thinking then, I was like, at some point I gotta get to know this guy, because if Dave likes him like that, I'm positive I'm gonna like him.
Oh, well, very flattering. I pay him well. Hopefully he doesn't put on his taxes. It's funny you mentioned Tarboro, right? For anyone who most people, like you say, won't know, it's a town of less than 10,000 people. And we mentioned Eastern North Carolina. The way you describe Eastern North Carolina is it is population centers of 10 to 50,000 people that are 30 minutes apart with a lot of nothing in between.
Yeah.
Go in any direction and you get to the next one in 30 minutes. And the unique fabric of the area is that everybody knows everybody.
Everybody knows everybody.
Maybe your parents grew up going to the same beach. Maybe they went to the same university. If you could get out, but basically, if you get out of Eastern North Carolina and get to Raleigh, that's the big goal. In a way, you really get somewhere. And point being that you can't ever hide, and so you have to be nice to everybody, and everybody knows your business.
Yeah.
And so for us, being able to, kind of always care about the reputation, I think is definitely core to us. And so for Dave or anybody to pass along that kind of feedback just means the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, tell me so 25 years as a restaurant financier. Let's break that down a little bit as to how you got into that space, and then where you are now and what that means, how you help restaurants grow.
Yeah. Historically, it really was from the banking side, lending to food and beverage businesses. There's a very long, convoluted, but also Eastern North Carolina story of kind of how I fell into the industry. And but it was basically one guy that I had run across multiple times in my life who was a beer distributor, who was always nice to me and made me feel valued. And as random as it was, as a junior banker, we showed up on this call, and here's this guy who used to come to my teller window when I was a summer teller for old BB&T, and he was super nice. He talked to me the whole meeting. Forget the boss, forget the city exec. He talked to me because he knew me. And I thought, I was 23, 24 years old at the time, and beer distributor. This is like the greatest idea in the history of the world. This exists, and so I fell in love with in general with food and beverage at that point in time, in part because someone was nice to me, and that's hospitality, right? Mm-hmm. And so after business school, I joined J.P. Morgan and happened to be rotating through an industry group that focused on food and beverage. So they had a franchise group, and one Friday afternoon, I'll never forget, my boss came to my door at 5:00. And in hindsight, my boss never came to my door at 5:00. He never came to my door. I was just a little associate. And he said, "What are you doing this weekend?" And I started to tell him, we're going to go do this, we're going to do this. And he kind of hit me about halfway through. Something's going on. I said, "What do you want me to be doing this weekend?" And as luck would have it, it was a deal that actually Wendy's was buying a concept. I was in Houston at the time, and it was a Houston-based concept. And so this particular group focused on Coke bottlers, beer distributors, and franchisees and large restaurant companies. And so we worked on getting credit approval over the weekend, and on Monday morning, Wendy's announced the acquisition. And my boss came back to me and said, "That worked pretty well. Would you like to stay in the group?" And absolutely. And so pretty much since that was early 2002, Since then, only a year or two have I been kind of outside of food and beverage.
Okay.
Today, Hargett Hunter, our firm in Raleigh, we don't lend, although we will lend kind of a structured basis if that's the right need for a business. But we focus exclusively on bringing both capital and capability, operating capability, to emerging restaurant concepts.
Okay.
I put emerging in parentheses, if you will, because the concept, the company doesn't necessarily have to be in high growth mode at the time of investment, but we need to be able to believe that we have some angle, some thesis, some reason that we believe that we can bring something to the brand to help it grow.
Okay.
And to kind of hopefully place it onto a power growth trajectory.
Okay.
So we invest exclusively in restaurants, which there's a tremendous amount of compounding knowledge, network effect, if you will, that kind of comes from that focus. A traditional investment firm, if you will, and nobody's stereotypical or generic, but generally speaking, a consumer-focused firm may get their diversification by investing in a shoe retailer and investing in a hat manufacturer and maybe a restaurant. We get our diversification through investing in restaurants because of service format, food category, and geography, because that's all we do. So
service, format, food category, geography.
Yep.
Okay.
So
all
whether
right.
it's fast casual, we can't do all barbecue in Texas. We can't do all, Mexican in North Carolina. But generally speaking, we want to provide our investors, our limited partners who entrust us with their capital, the diversification of having, a chicken concept from Nashville or a burger concept from Virginia, whatever it may be.
Okay.
But we differentiate a couple of ways. One is we're very flexible on the type of capital solution. So what I mean by that is we don't have a one size fits all. Like, here's our deal. This is the way we do things. Have to have 55%, of every deal. What we try to do is understand where the business is and its needs. Could be different at 4 stores or 40 stores. And then we try to create the right capital solution that the existing investors and maybe founders desire and what's best for the business. And then separately, I think, again, back to singularity of focus allows us to do this. We have an operating toolkit, if you will. So, we love restaurant acronyms, right? So our HOST toolkit. So the Hargett Operating Services Toolkit is basically our way of creating functionally aligned support for our businesses. So, for example, in addition to individuals, we also have preferred partnerships, basically vendors, service providers, vendors that we can use for purposes of scale, to bring operating solutions to our businesses. So whether it is beverage innovation, whether it's real estate, whether it's finance and accounting, construction management, you name the need. And we have dedicated resources ready, willing, able to support the needs of the businesses.
Okay.
So but we can do that because this is all we do. If I had to spend time trying to find a shoe retailer, we would just be impossible to build that type of mousetrap.
Sure. Okay. Are you the founder of the firm?
I did, 2015.
Okay.
Which is, in many ways, I'm like a tree. You get a ring every year. I get 5 pounds. So imagine. It's amazing how fast time flies.
You went out on your own, or what happened? What was the trigger moment or the inciting incident that you decided to do this?
Man, I had the best partner and partners that you could ever imagine. I had a good friend who had created his own firm, and we wanted to invest in restaurant concepts. It was and I had obviously I'd been both at J.P. Morgan and GE Capital franchise finance from the lending side, so had the opportunity to step in on the equity side. And very sadly, he got sick unexpectedly at a very young age. So it just kind of created a different set of circumstances for everybody. And so the ultimate evolution for me was, complete dedication to this industry. Had obviously been in it at that point 15 years. It was definitely my home. Didn't want to do anything different. And so just continued to evolve around the network and was able to be supported by a couple of large family offices that wanted to deploy capital into the space. And luckily I had a couple of deals and great opportunities kind of teed up, and one thing led to another. And before you know it, here we go.
So because you've got investors that are limited partners in this business, and then you raise a certain amount of capital, and your job is to go redeploy that in an efficient and effective way for good, steady returns for these family offices, hopefully over the long term.
Yeah, great.
You're not like buying a concept and teeing it up and flipping it 3 years later, or you could, I guess, but like depending on I guess that's your point. You don't have a set way. It depends on what the brand needs, what the goals are, what the opportunity is. Is that?
Let's dive into that, because it's interesting.
Yeah.
And it always drives me nuts when particularly investors just, sit up and act as though everybody in the world is supposed to understand, exactly the way the world. I'm still learning the way the world works. I've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
So a few different ways. A family office, just in general, right, for lack of a better term, is usually a large pool of capital that probably was created by an entrepreneurial event or an entrepreneurial generation that just created so much wealth. They have to find, there's various ways to get diversification and to invest that capital. From our perspective, I hate being called a private equity. I mean, like, ugh,
that was stomach. I mean, my question I was about to ask is like, so you're private equity for restaurants, right?
So here's the deal: we're private, and we have equity.
Yeah, I got you.
Guess what? Billy Bob, who might have a honky tonk on the corner, is also private.
Yeah,
he has private investors.
Yeah,
private equity.
Yeah.
Now I get it. I understand. But the point being that the phrase certainly means something, institutionally, but we look, we sound, we talk, we act a lot more like an operator than an investor.
Yeah.
It just so happens, to your point about in the investment model, is if you think about it, just make it up. You have a guy that created a computer company forever ago, and you have a woman that created an accounting business that sold, or a consulting business that sold for billions, and you have people that made money in energy, or even like an endowment, like a public university that has billions of dollars that they have to invest. You have all these people that have pools of capital, and they are trying to find ways to get exposure to different pieces of the U.S. economy, or private investments. They're not going to go buy McDonald's they probably are buying McDonald's in the public markets, but that's their public allocation. So if you play through that for a second, think about this: the restaurant industry, the U.S. hospitality industry, is the second largest employer in the country behind the government. Makes up about 4.7% of U.S. GDP.
15 million employees.
Over $1 trillion of annual spend in the industry. think about the people that work inside of these businesses. There's an awful lot of diversity, right? So you want to support the U.S. economy, and you want to be diversified, and you also want to support the U.S. workforce. It's kind of hard to do that and not be a part of this industry. So you hear people who are scared to invest in restaurants. I get it. And that's one of the reasons why, for example, we like to talk about chains and brands and not restaurants. Everyone's got a friend who had a restaurant that didn't do well, and we all have, even if it's a chain or a brand. But usually, what we are investing in are things that are hopefully our filter has helped us refine this, have proven some form of concept for industry parlance before we invest. So what we do is we raise money from pools of capital, whether it be people, families, endowments, funds that have decided, hey, we want exposure to this part of the economy. And how do we get it? There aren't a lot of people who really kind of institutionalize. We've already talked about the operating component of this, right? They're certainly not singularly focused. So the idea of being able to get that type of exposure to the lower middle market, where you can buy something at 5 units that can become the next, let's use today's big success story, Kava, right? So Brett Schulman's a fantastic friend of mine. I've known him since store number 2, maybe 3. And so, who can be the next Kava? Well, you can, if you're successful in doing that, right, you can be very, very, very financially successful. And so that's what we try to do. We try to find brands that we can support through the growth phase, then ultimately exit. If it's in 3 years, it's in 3 years. That's not the goal, and typically that's not going to happen, right? But in part because one of the things that, and it's why we have the operational focus, it takes a lot of time to build the infrastructure and to find the model, if you will, that becomes replicable, scalable, predictable, profitable. We want to take that model and then go open in, we'll just make it up, right? Atlanta, Tampa, Omaha, Houston. And so it takes time to do that, and then ultimately time to get to that point of the natural selling or exiting of the business.
Yeah.
So our investors, we owe them their money back. That's the expectation. When we raise the money from them, we set a set of parameters. You'll get your money back in X years with this type of return, et cetera. And so in some cases, you don't have a choice. It's been 8 years. It's time. But generally speaking, we do own concepts longer than what you kind of hear from private equity because it takes a little bit longer to do that work that we're doing to be able to kind of professionalize the businesses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so when I think of private equity as somebody who's never been in this space, I think of, we're going to buy this thing, strip out all the costs, take out all the culture and everything that makes it great. We're going to get the cost structure down. It's all about the expense side of the balance sheet. We're going to flip it in 3 to 5 years. Like that seems like playbook type stuff from when I think of private equity. And what you're talking about is yes, it is private equity, but it's a very, just a very different mindset and model. And no, you don't sound like a private equity guy, and you do sound more like an operator. And
it's the accent.
Well, look, man, yeah, but I'm telling you, this goes back. This is why Dave said what he said. I mean, he's used to private equity guys coming in there and talking to him probably about, buying Big Red F. And, I'm sure he's had that conversation plenty of times, and he knows, that I feel like in restaurants, you have to have, you talked about this, Jeff, like this industry is super special for so many reasons. Like the numbers alone, it's such a huge employer. You also mentioned diversity. There's no other industry that has the amount of just natural diversity of workforce than you could than the restaurant industry, because not only like racial diversity, socioeconomic diversity. You've been in jail for 3 different times, but you finally got sober and you're turning your life around. Let's go. Come on, you got a job. Like, I mean, this is almost the last refuge for people. It's like, I can't get a job anywhere else.
Or the first refuge.
Or the first. Or somebody like Steve Palmer, who says the restaurant industry saved his life twice. From Indigo. Do you know Steve from Indigo?
I don't know him, but no.
So it's an incredible industry for that reason, and it has a lot of heart and a lot of soul, and I think you have to understand that really well to do what you do really well, because I think it could be easy to sit and not really understand what hospitality is all about and look at numbers on a spreadsheet and miss the fact that if a brand doesn't have that beating soul behind it, of the people that are behind it, it's going to be hard to sustain success for a long time.
100%. Here's what I would say. Particularly when we are investing such a small businesses as we're investing in, anywhere, 5-ish units, $10-ish million of revenue is a minimum. But this should be fair. We've invested in businesses that have as little as 3 stores. Yeah, I make jokes sometimes. I can know more about a concept with 3 stores around Houston than I can 15 stores in Midtown Manhattan. Right? But the different, it all depends about trade area and demographics and psychographics and whatever. However, with that said, we are in love with a concept for a lot of reasons. Quality usually being one of them, the guest and consumer experience being another. Why in the world would we ever want to change it?
Yeah.
Right. And so what we want to do are find ways to support those businesses to enhance the ability to effectively transport what already makes the brand super special and be able for it to grow with less risk than it would have done without us.
Yeah. Yeah.
But is there, if you think about, I mean, it's not rocket science, right? You have, the beginning of a company. You have its early growth stage. We kind of put a box around that called becoming a business. There's work to be done. Then you kind of get into power growth, that up and to the right hockey stick. And then you hit maturity, right? And then at maturity, one of 2 things happen. You start growing again, or you start declining. Now, one of the phrases in the industry is, you can't kill a brand. It'll be hard for people to remember, but there was a time where very few people had heard, and you couldn't find a Pabst Blue Ribbon.
Yeah.
But can't kill a brand. And now all of a sudden, people drink PBR again. And so similarly, these brands hit these points where they either start going up. We had one, in North Carolina with Daryl's, years ago.
Yeah.
And, bought by, was it like General Mills, and who ended up having Houlihan, right? Everyone loved Daryl's.
Yeah.
It was oh my gosh, go get those crackers and go visit Daryl's. It was when you grew up in Eastern North Carolina, right? Get to Raleigh and get to Daryl's. There's still a Daryl's. Yeah. Like, there's only one, but it's still there. And so with that said, you hit these points where
it's an inflection point.
Inflection points, and they're the right owners. There are hopefully right, but also wrong owners for different points along that curve.
Yeah.
And is there a right time to take cost out? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a long way away from where we are going to be.
Yeah.
So our goal is to find these fantastic concepts that have, management teams, or at least have owners who want to help build the right management team, which we help to do, to support those next steps for that brand, and effectively professionalize the ability to replicate those stores. So this way, when you open in Atlanta or Knoxville or St. Louis, I know just to make up the numbers, I know every single time we build a store, it's going to cost $1 million. Maybe 1.1, maybe 950, but it's not 1.5 and it's not 500, right? But predictability. Every time we open a store, it's going to cost us $1 million. And every time it opens, we do $2 million the first year. And the second year, we're up 10%. And the third year, up 20%. And now have a model because we've done that in multiple time zones, multiple trade areas. And that now is predictable. So we don't want to take the soul out of the brand by any way, shape, or form. We want to basically leverage that soul to more people and build a mousetrap whereby that soul becomes more predictable as you grow.
So roughly minimum 5 units in revenue.
Well, if you're casual dining doing $4 or $5 million a pop, that's going to put you pretty high. So we kind of say just in general, $10-ish million of revenue is a number that's a big enough company. But like I say, we've looked at things that are and even invested in things that had less, but had excellent numbers at, let's just say three units, for example.
Okay. And then up to
really no high end. I think generally speaking, 40 to 50 stores is probably where we start to lose competitive advantage, if you will, some specialty. And here's what I mean by that. We will pay up. We will, and any of my friends who might be listening to this in the industry might laugh at that. But we will pay the right price for the right concept. But we don't want to overpay, right? There is concern. Like how else do you mitigate risk? How else do you make sure that you're not creating just a binary outcome? You're either going to succeed just amazingly, or you're going to fail miserably. We don't believe that has to be the case. We believe that there are ways to protect capital and to not take too much risk in these investments. And one way is by not overpaying.
Yeah.
So usually when you start to get to 40 or 50 stores, you start to get to a point where we're competing with people that have such big checkbooks. And I'll dovetail back to what we were talking about a moment ago about private equity. They have such big checkbooks, they can pay really anything they want to because, again, their diversification is their job is to deploy as much money as they possibly can. That's how they get paid well. We don't do big. We don't raise a lot of money to make a lot of money off of. Sounds kind of strange, but what we want to do is create such asymmetrical returns. We don't really get paid well until a company does really well.
Right, I got you.
Well, if we go spend way too much, it makes that harder. Yeah. So when a company starts to be 40 or 50 stores, someone else can just pay so much more than we can pay. It's not probably a fit.
Yeah, there's probably more interest from more people in that space than maybe
There's a lot more liquidity. We do not have a significant amount of we don't have a significant amount of competition doing what we do.
Okay, gotcha. And I read, I think literally this morning, I did. It was on CNBC, on the website. There was an article, and if I remember this correctly, family offices, the industry, if you will, of family offices is now larger than hedge funds. There's like $5.4 trillion or something in family office money out there. Family offices don't want, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of times they're not looking to pay that 2 and 20 through, like they're basically their own hedge fund sort of.
It depends.
It depends.
Yeah, everyone has a little bit of a different model. Yeah, right there, okay. Some folks whose office is built to go find their own deals and to make those deals directly, maybe partner with an existing management team. So yeah, they're not going to be paying a fee because they're going to do the work. So let's just make it up. Let's say there's a 25 unit burger concept in which they want to invest. This is a great example to continue to set the explanation of what makes these things different, these words you hear in these models. 25 unit burger chain that they want to invest in, they go, they're could be a group that decides, okay, we will go work with this management team, with this ownership team. We'll strike a deal and we will support them directly. There's no one to pay a fee to for that. If they didn't want to do that work, that's where we step in.
Okay.
They work with us, and then we go do that work.
Okay.
Not just of putting the deal together, but also managing the asset after investment, and then basically governing the business, being on the board, setting strategy with management, and then helping exit. So we do all that work that if they wanted to do on their own, they certainly could. But then it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and particularly when you then layer in the acknowledged uniqueness of the industry, right? There's a reason. It's kind of funny when
I can't imagine trying to. I mean, you better know what you're doing in this industry. This, which is my next question, is how do you know what you're doing? Like, you financed these things for a while, like, because I listened before we started recording. I mean, this is like episode 550-ish, right? I've been doing this 12 years. Hey, y'all, running a restaurant, as we all know, is no easy task, but Webstaurant Store has your back. From heavy-duty equipment to everyday kitchen essentials, we've got everything you need to stay stocked all year long. And right now, you can save $50 on your order of $250 or more when you use the code WEBSAVE50 at checkout. That's WEBSAVE50, WEBSAVE50. But hurry, this offer is only available until December 31st. Visit webstaurantstore.com today to snag some savings. And y'all, I'll throw in this piece. That's what they asked me to say. These folks are awesome to work with. They have a great website, highly regarded, a lot of happy customers, and we're super stoked to have them as a sponsor. So go check them out, webstaurantstore.com. And again, that code is WebSave50. Thanks. I used to think I wanted to own a restaurant. When I started doing this podcast and we got kind of schedule fly going, I was like, yeah, man, I'm a Widespread Panic fan, and I always had this idea. There's a song called Ribs and Whiskey by Widespread that I really like. I was like, I'm going to have a place called Ribs and Whiskey one day, and that's how we're going to close the night, every night with that song. And I mean, I was like young, dumb, naive, like, yeah, restaurant, man, like, how hard can that be? Holy crap, dude, have I learned, like, talking to Dave Query, one of the first people I ever had on this podcast. In our first book that we wrote about successful restaurant owners, Scott Maitland at Top of the Hill, another one. And I went, oh my gosh, these guys are wicked smart dudes. And I'm just listening to one thing after another that they have to solve for all the freaking time. Holy crap. You better have like a real passion for serving people and a cool head. And when every single day a literal fire or metaphorical fire might break out, and know how to deal with people on your team, and somebody just quit and this happened here with this person, and then you got to upset. Like, it's an incredibly intense, challenging business. I have like massive respect for people that really get it right in this industry, because I think it's 1,000 times harder than the general public has any clue to really be good. Even if you know what you're doing, even if you have capital, even if you have a formula, there's so many things that you can whittle down and mitigate so many risks, but then there's just so many things that can happen all the time in operating a successful. So dude, I mean, like, literally, I tip my hat. Like, if you figured out how to bring the resources to bear to help these brands, like, that's awesome. Where did you get? How did you figure? Was it through observing successful operators all this time? And like, what made you decide to go, I think I could help these brands be successful?
Feels like a trick question. I'm not saying
I'm not questioning your ability. I'm actually very curious, like, how you got to that point, because you're clearly very good at what you do.
It's perpetual. It never stops.
Okay,
absolutely never stops.
Yeah,
and we change the model all the time. We learn. Let's do it this. Let's go back to the host toolkit for a moment. Let's go execute. I'm gonna just pick something, right? Let's go execute real estate this way. And then maybe a year or two later, you're like, that was close, but no cigar. Like we have some changes to make. So always evolving and learning. And you understand this being from the tech side, right? Technology's always changing. Yep. So whatever that perfect solution may be for learning management system, whatever it may be, whatever those perfect solutions may be, changes very quickly.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's part of the way we can help is I'm not going to make the decision for you, but I can get you access very quickly to being able to assess what you want to put into your to our business. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example, then I'll come back to this probably in a couple other ways. The very first investment we ever made, great concept. Very first investment we ever made. It was a group of founders I had known for a long time. We know that's part of the beauty of the industry. Since you live and breathe it, we're not just looking for deals. Like, in fact, we don't talk about doing deals, or investors will ask, how do you source or originate? Like, we don't source and originate. We cover the industry. We live it. We breathe it. We're of it. Therefore, the opportunities just happen. First investment, we had a meeting once, and the idea of point of sale popped up. Now, investors, right? Like, you're supposed to be talking about this other stuff, and we're talking about point of sale systems. And I gave a suggestion based off of what they were, service format and food category wise, and we continued to talk about how we might be able to partner. And 6 months later, as we were finally getting some definition around that partnership, one of the founders said, I have to tell you this, we just spent 6 months assessing point of sale systems, and I had remembered in a meeting that you mentioned one. So I went back to my notes, and what you suggested 6 months ago was what, after 6 months of research, we chose. You could have saved us 6 months if we would have just listened to you.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying we know, anything, but what my point is that living and breathing it certainly kind of helps, hopefully, shortcut things for our operating teams.
Yeah.
But I go back to that. No one who sits in Raleigh on the investment team is an operator. We don't play one on television. I say we don't become one after spending the night at a Holiday Inn Express. It just doesn't happen. However, we also are very, 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 very. We elevate the perspective and the opinions of our operating partners to a point where, that's how I think that's our part of our secret sauce is the impact of our team from an operating perspective.
Yeah,
we're not real estate experts, but we have them, right? And so for us, we haven't cracked the code. Hopefully, if we ever think we've cracked the code, we probably start losing more than we win, right? So have to always be getting better. But at the very least, we understood that the leaders and the operators, let's just cut it off and say less than 25 units, they have a unique set of needs, and those needs are not just capital. And so if you can bring them more than just the capital solution, you have a chance to create something really special together.
Tech has been interesting over the last 10 years. There was free money, and billions and billions and billions poured into restaurant tech. When an industry that, like, prior to that, there was almost no tech. Be interesting to see what happens over the next few years. There's probably going to be a lot of consolidation because there's too much tech. I talked to an operator in New York about a week or two ago, and they've got 8 or 10 restaurants up there. And she said, "Will, literally every single day, we are fielding phone calls and emails and just nonstop. We're hit over the head with somebody trying to sell us restaurant tech." And like you take like the hub and spoke thing, and even in our space scheduling, there's 15 firms and then if you take like sort of the all-in-ones and you add scheduling as a piece, it's even more. And then there's online ordering and there's point of sale, and it's just overwhelming. So there's a lot of value in just, the time, like 6 months exploring a POS, and then you've got this next piece that you got to look at, and this next piece, and this next piece. The amount of time that restaurant operators have to spend just trying to navigate, and I'm just talking about the tech piece, not all the everything else, is overwhelming. So I see you're out there a lot. Your team's out there. You're speaking. You're engaged. You're networking. So you kind of know. I'm gathering that if the concept is this, if it's a fast casual, and like you probably have like just off the top of your head, you could probably start rattling off like, well, these are probably some good solutions for that type of business. Absolutely. Because you're so dialed in.
And we can also hopefully help create. I won't use names just to, for the purposes of, but even during pre-COVID and during COVID, we've got lots of different businesses, many of them pretty small, not important enough to be on a bigger company who's working towards their IPO's list. Like, we're not going to work with this 4-unit chain. But when you put them all together, all of a sudden, you know what? We will support. So now all of a sudden we have a 4-unit chain in Birmingham that has access to technology that no other 4-unit chain in Birmingham is going to have access to, because we're able to pool that type of power.
Yeah.
Same thing with things like, food distribution, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
We do have a joke about tech in the restaurant, because the sales pitch is the same for everyone. Here's the ROI. If you'll just do this, we'll save you. You'll get a 70% return, and we'll save you all this money. We're like, we should just shut down the restaurant and just buy all this tech, and we'll make money, because the way that all this math works out, like there you go.
Yes. It's, be careful with that. You got people that are spending all their time on managing their tech. So what are some good, like, just good restaurant tech solutions that y'all like a lot? Like you mentioned LMS or POS, like, I'm sure you don't do the same for every concept. Or
no,
maybe
we don't. No, it's a good. That's actually, because
if you're going to maybe you're aggregating all these ones and saying, I want Toast to give us a good deal that you might not give to, or whatever. Or
that's fluid and malleable, right?
Yeah.
So we'll go do that. But on the flip side of it, we won't necessarily force a concept to take something.
Okay.
Right. So should that be more of a part of the playbook? We debate that a lot.
Yeah.
Like, hey, this is just what you're going to use.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. If you think about where these companies are from an evolution perspective, that's kind of part of taking the soul out of it, right? They need to pick what's best for them.
Yeah.
We need to help any way we can, drive a better bargain, open up that tech to other concepts. But we can't just force it to happen.
Yeah.
I use this example a lot. Like, we may have the best CFO in the world, and so part of our model, shared services, right? So think about it. If you're a 6-unit concept, you don't want to go spend, let's just throw out numbers, hundreds of thousands of dollars on this great CFO, but it'd be great to have access to, he or her. So, all right, here we have this great CFO. The beautiful thing about our world is that we can share it with 3 concepts. So you're now getting talent you would have never gotten otherwise, and you're only paying a third.
Yeah.
Instead of having to bring them on full time before you can use them. So which is great when you're talking about a concept that has 50% plus cash on cash returns. Now we just saved a couple $100,000. We can go open another store more quickly and make more money. With that said, you'd have no idea. And even no matter how much you diligence, no matter how deep you get into understanding the team dynamics and everything, you don't know anything about the true dynamics of that CFO in that business. May actually be the person who picked every piece of real estate. Mm-hmm. They weren't the head of development. No one talked about it. But at the end of the day, behind the scenes, they may have magic about picking real estate. But you know what? I have got a better CFO. You got to use her. That's where it goes wrong. So
smart.
So you got to be careful. And you know what? You also don't know. Could be the cousin of the wife of the
right.
Of the team, and now Thanksgiving goes bad. Like I don't want to be the reason for any of that.
That's funny. So I noticed on your website some of the brands y'all have, some of the ones you've worked with. Like one was Bojangles. So in that situation, is that where you have or had like a franchisee who, like, how do you get involved? Like, because they're massive.
Yeah. Great question. That's actually part of the origin story. So my partner Brian and I met when we both lived here in Charlotte. And he actually worked for the private equity firm that acquired Bojangles.
Okay.
So he was that's part of how it got in his blood. Right. So he had touched food and beverage a little bit, but now all of a sudden here we are in, Charlotte, and they go by Bojangles. So he gets a chance to work on that deal and then basically be the, work side seat with the CFO and be a part of Bojangles.
Okay.
And that's how we met. I helped finance and refinance the cap stack there when I was at GE. And obviously I would do anything to be a part of Bojangles.
Yeah.
And so that's how so that's on the website along with a couple of other things I did before Hargett Hunter. So it's specifically in there in previous partner.
Yeah. Previous part. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you know Cam McRae?
Well, Eastern North Carolina.
Well, there you go. Yes, of course I do, because he's from one of those towns that's 30 miles from the next town.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Kinston.
I think I've ate at 3 of Cam's stores in the last 3 days.
Have you really?
Absolutely. I know. Yeah, I just drove back from the beach on Tuesday, so there you go. You hit it all.
There
you go.
Yeah, Atlanta Beach.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you know the Barrises?
Barris?
Charles and Auburn Barris.
I don't.
They went to Charles was my roommate all 4 years in college, and we went to Woodbury together. They're in Kinston.
Okay.
Barris Construction was their dad's business, and anyway, they're from there, and that's how I got to know Cam initially many years ago. But he tried. I worked at. Quick side story. I worked at. Because I have so much respect for him. I worked at Nations Bank right out of college. And it was very clearly not cut out for corporate America. But I was in cash management, and there's a RM, Jonathan Hand, that was in Kinston and had Tans Incorporated was his customer.
Yeah.
So I was out there selling, pitching cash management tools, and he had his treasurer or whatever, Emily, and Cam just sat quietly in the room while I was, just nodded and watched and didn't say anything when I was in this meeting. And then they called me a month later. Cam wants to meet with you. I was like, oh shit, what did I do? Did I screw up their account? They're like, no, you need to take some time off of work. He wants to talk to you about something. So I'm like, okay. So I had no clue what's going on. And I went out there to Kinston, and he was trying to recruit me to come be sort of like a right-hand man, he wanted to, whatever. And I was like, because I'm not from Eastern North Carolina. I was like, hell no, I'm not moving to Eastern North Carolina. No freaking way, man. And I mean, he obviously owns his own island now. And it's like, oops. But things worked out well. But yeah, I mean, I was like, I'm freaking go live in Kinston and work for Bojangles? What? Hell no. So myopic and
we just
clueless.
Don't know. That's the part of the journey is learning.
Yeah, no. So, but I actually got to meet with him again a few months ago. We joined the Bojangles Franchise Association a few months back, and because we've got some franchisees that use Schedulefly, and so I was like, well, how do we get more? So I just went and got his advice and talked to him, and he was kind and as expected. But anyway, what a success story that's been.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so you're not, as you said, that was one of the questions I was thinking about asking is how do you quote source your deals? But you're out there, you're adding value, you're doing good work. There's word of mouth, there's relationships. It's a tight knit industry. Somebody's growing a concept or whatever, and they may hear about you and you may talk to me. I've got one when I emailed you about earlier that you hadn't heard of. It's probably too small, but
nothing's too small.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we're not looking to do deals. Yeah. We're just looking to know people.
Yeah.
And to that point, right? kind of go back to, the juxtaposition between kind of our model and, let's just say, traditional private equity. Right? If you're working on a deal as an investor, let's just make it up. It's you're going to fly into Austin, Texas for a management meeting. Right. So you got to fly in, you got to have the meeting, fly back. That's because you've, let's just say it's Tecovas, like I was going to buy some boots,
Yeah.
So we're going to go in and meet with Tecovas and, we'll get out of there. Maybe we could get some time with Yeti, but for the most part, you're in and out, because then your other deal might be, a microphone manufacturer and you've got to get to Detroit, whatever it may be. For us, we go in for, whether it's a board meeting, whether it's a meeting about a deal, whatever. And why would I leave? I've got dozens of people to potentially meet with in this town.
Mm-hmm.
So we're on the road a lot. But so you go to Austin and you stay 2 or 3 days and you take a dozen meetings, because everyone wants to talk hospitality, right? And so we're not trying to do a deal. So we sit down with a 7-unit burger concept in Austin, and we'll never once talk about a deal. We talk about labor, we talk about scheduling, we talk about tech, whatever it may be, because we're trying to exchange ideas and learn. If an investment evolves out of that over time, that's fantastic. So if you think about that, and then you just kind of layer on doing that in 20 cities a year, and doing that for 20 years, and doing that with a full team, the compounding impact of that is massive.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It also, is not great for the physique.
You eat a lot of good food.
Eat a lot of good food, drink a lot of good drink.
What? So you're in? How long you're going to be here? Because
same thing. We a combination of
came
both
today.
Investor meetings actually drove up Tuesday.
Okay.
Investor meetings as well as checking out some concepts.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And there happens to be a little football game this weekend with the Wolfpack.
With Wolfpack.
So yeah, that'll be fun.
Good. Wait, what game is it? They're playing
Tennessee in Bank of America Stadium.
Bank of America Stadium. Okay. Yeah. I grew up a State fan. I didn't go there, but
God bless you.
It's hard to be a State fan if you didn't go to State.
No one chooses to be a State fan.
You choose to be a State fan. I grew up in Charlotte, a State fan, where everybody, and I mean everybody I grew up with, was either a Carolina fan or a Duke fan.
Course.
And I'm like State guy.
I love it.
And hey, 5-pack attack, man. I'll never forget my dad in 1983 when they won that basketball game against Houston. And I mean, I thought our house was going to collapse. I'll never forget that. And that's when I was like, yeah, man, I like that team. They're good.
There you go.
Well, okay. So you're on the road a lot. You're seeing how many, what would you call it? Portfolio companies or what? Like
we've made 10 investments.
Okay.
So we're in no hurry.
Yeah.
There's velocity of capital matters in the industry, but we, particularly with COVID, threw a lot of wrenches into a lot of things. So we take a pretty measured and paced approach to investing, and therefore have a little bit extra time to spend with the portfolio companies. So we've made 10 investments off the platform. We've invested both directly, whereby we might talk to investors and go buy something, and then we just own that business, on its own. Then we also have invested out of a fund structure, whereby you raise money into this idea of a collective of, half dozen investments, and they're all tied together. Not operationally, just financially, like, one does great, one doesn't do great. It's all blended. But I think I did a little bit of the loose math. I think ultimately we have owned 100-ish units in 12 states. Again, geographic diversification. We've been in Hawaii. We did something. We had a fantastic partnership with a $2 billion revenue and market cap publicly traded business out of Japan. Right, where they turned to us to help them grow their flagship brand in the United States. Ton of fun, and a great model for us. If you have brands from other countries and want to bring them here, you can do it on your own. Good luck with that. or you can find people who can help. And so another way we've been able to leverage our operating capability, but then also deploy capital behind our own efforts and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. How outside of the numbers, what do you look for? And like what are the things where you start to go, okay, spreadsheets aside, projections aside, like, I mean, like you think about Warren Buffett. Like he talks about, I want a moat. I want a really strong management team. Like he has really clear criteria that they're looking for. But even with really clear criteria, like what really is a moat and what is a strong, like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
I totally understand.
It's in your head, I'm sure, in your team's head, and you know what you're looking for. I'm fascinated with like the things where you go, I don't know, I'm not so sure about this one, or the things where you go, we might have something really special here. Is it always a math formula, or is it something more to it? Okay.
The math formula is kind of simple.
Yeah.
It's just cash on cash returns. You can take, we get asked it a lot of different ways. What kind of volumes do you like? And, what type of KPIs do you like? And whatever it might be. Like you take every single number, any number you want in the industry, throw it into a paper bag. And somehow or another, as it comes out, we're going to look at it through the lens of cash on cash returns. Can't be more simple. How much money do you put into a store and how much do you get out?
Mm-hmm.
I took, after my landlord paid some TI and everything else, I put $1 million into the store, and every year I make $500,000. That's a 50% cash on cash return.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good number. So generally speaking, any investor is looking for the best cash on cash returns they can find. Now realize, and important to note, when you're swinging your own hammer, right? When let's just say you've got a ribs and whiskey. Yeah. Right. So when you go open ribs and whiskey and you did the construction yourself, your construction cost is going to be low. So your cash on cash return is going to be high. Problem with that is you can't go build ribs and whiskeys everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to look at that through the lens of when it's prototyped, when we're stamping them out, how much does it cost to build?
Uh-huh.
So, let's just say that 35%, is a good number. So everybody wants, no matter who that investor is, they want excellent cash on cash returns. The next question is, what are those other things? Right? Forget the numbers. What are the other things that people use as their filter for finding concepts? And, there's really a couple of ways to break that down. One is you mentioned management team and other things that kind of create a moat, or there's the company's characteristics. And we actually have a lot of flexibility on that. Management team being a great example. In many of our deals, the management team actually chose to step aside. So this is a little different. Like a lot of times it was founder-led. And the founder came to the decision and the realization on their own that this thing can be really big. And
but I'm not the person.
But I'm not the person.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great, right? Because we want them around on the board, help with design, help with culture. Like that's a perfect situation, right? We get to keep the ethos of the brand, the culture of the brand. But sometimes founders, want to keep going. That's what we'll do. Whatever. The cool thing is we have the capability to do what. Again, like I sat on. I won't say who it was because they're just they're just a great group. But I was on a panel a few years ago, and there's two other private equity firms, and one of them had a very, very clear mandate. We support founder-led businesses, with high growth opportunities. It sounds good coming out, right? And I thought, and I even said on stage, like, have you met some of these founders?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to put ourselves in that big of a box.
Yeah.
We want to be able to do, we've bought businesses that had already been bought by someone else from the founder. So I can't support a founder-led business. That founder was long gone. So we do have a filter from a concept perspective. Forget all the company characteristics for a moment. And it's pretty squishy. I mean, it sounds very subjective. But, shocker, this is not a South Boston accent, right? It's south of the Mason-Dixon line accent. And we think about the world through a lens of the 300 million people that don't live in urban metropolitan areas. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's a steal from Seinfeld. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but a concept that is built on the DNA and on the operating model that, effectively comes from, let's say, a Philly or a New York is maybe not necessarily going to work in Tulsa and Toledo. To be honest with you, I'd rather compete in Little Rock and Tulsa and Toledo than those other markets. Money's just as green, and it's a lot less competition sometimes if you have something great. So we define greatness through authenticity, approachability, and differentiation. And that sounds very subjective. And
say it again.
Authenticity, differentiation, and approachability.
Okay. All right.
But to us, we have certain things that means to us, and we apply that filter, and it's worked really well for us. I use the bowl, BOWL. I know my accent again. I use the bowl category as a great example, which now bowls have proliferated a little bit more. But, a few years ago, we used to make a joke. Every town had a 3-unit bowl concept, right? Everybody had their, have you been to so-and-so? Well, whatever that is in Charlotte, there was one in Raleigh, and there was one in Tampa, and there's one in Orlando. There's a 3-unit bowl concept everywhere. And guess what? We bought a 3-unit bowl concept. First investment we ever made, right? Original Chop Shop. And Original Chop Shop out of Scottsdale, Arizona, 3-unit bowl concept. However, a lot of these bowl concepts, a lot of any concept, right? There was a concept back in the day. I'll pick on them because I don't even think they exist anymore. And not picking on them, but I'm using it as an example. Life Kitchen, LYFE. Life Kitchen had all the underpinnings of like McDonald's executives, and started with make it up, $10 or $20 million, and their first store was this amazing store in either Berkeley or outside of San Francisco, and they didn't even have a garden with until they found the homeless people used it as a bathroom, and so they stopped eating out of their garden. But all right, so if you're authentic, you don't need to learn that people are going to, poop and pee in your garden. Yeah. Right? Because you don't have the luxury of that. You have to go make ribs and whiskey work. Yeah. Right? Right. So for Chop Shop, great example. You had 2 fantastic husband and wife team. Great looking, great shape. Founders, and the reason they founded Chop Shop was because they worked in Old Town Scottsdale, and there was nothing healthy to eat. And they literally got a 400 square foot window, and they started selling sandwiches for lunch out of this window for healthy people to get food. Today, that store is about 1,800 square feet, and I won't tell you how much it does because it's confidential, but it does massive numbers. That's authenticity. Yeah. Right? It came from their heart, came from their soul. Yeah. And the customer knows it, whether you realize they know it or not. And so the difference between a 3-unit bowl concept that was authentic or a 3-unit bowl concept that happened to come from guys who started one of the best casual dining concepts ever and just decided the next hot thing is a bowl concept, very different.
Authentic, differentiated, approachable. At the time, that was a differentiated, but then these things pop up all over and it's not as differentiated. But when you're making an initial investment, you're looking for something that's...
So I think in this particular concept, we'll keep pulling that string for a moment. Part of its differentiation is actually in its approachability. Okay. So this particular concept has bowls, but it also has salads. Okay. It also has sandwiches. Okay. Also has juices and smoothies. Okay. So you get utilization. It also has breakfast. Yeah. So you get utilization at 10 in the morning and at 2 in the afternoon when the average restaurant may have nobody in it. Yeah. And so that's very approachable.
Right.
So part of their differentiation, in addition to the quality and effectively kind of the lifestyle aspirational positioning of the brand, was that it was not just a salad concept or not just a juice and smoothie concept. It was able to successfully put them all together in an operating model that was quite profitable. There's some differentiation, and as luck would have it, in that case, it's very approachable because you've got a broad menu.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. That makes so much sense. I love that. Are you seeing, so you're probably always ahead of the curve on emerging concepts or trends in, like that was a new concept at some point. I mean, Chipotle and all these places were a new idea. Now there's a lot of those. Like, do you see more people turning towards what I would call, quote, healthy options? And I asked that question, I couched that in the fact that, like, we are overwhelmed with healthcare and health issues now, and we're learning more that a lot of that's driven by what we're putting in our bodies. And then I see, because I'm like kind of all geeked out about this stuff, I'm seeing more and more movement towards, whole foods, or, people considering paying more for good quality food as an investment, not an expense. And that's a certain subset of the population, of course, but it seems like there's more opportunity in that space maybe than there has been in the past, but I have no idea.
I'm still trying to get over how someone who heard you look at me and say that I'm on the front end of stuff, wearing a jacket with this accent, and
you're dialed in, man.
That's hilarious.
You're dialed in. You are.
There's nobody thinking that this guy's on the front end of anything.
You are aware of what's happening. Like, I'm like, okay, I'll give you a specific example. Like, this is the first one I've seen, and I know there's got to be more, but to take this a step back, like, do you know that McDonald's, like
the McCafe?
No, like when we were growing up, McDonald's cooked their fries in beef tallow.
Right.
And now they cook it in some crappy oil that's really cheap. Beef tallow is really expensive, and there was also this, whatever, people thought that beef tallow was bad for you, something. Anyway, but now that's starting to become a thing again. Mm-hmm. Like, there are restaurants, there's a app called Seed Oil Scout, and if you don't want to go eat at a restaurant where there's seed oils, then you go get seed oil. I can't, because this is my phone, but you get an app that says, like, these are the restaurants that don't cook in seed oils, which you would think's like, who doesn't cook in seed oil? Well, there's a lot of them now, because people are going, I only want to eat places where they cook in tallow or ghee or whatever. Mm-hmm. So do you see concepts like that going? I mean, I saw somebody on Instagram yesterday, and like his concepts, he's in Nashville, and it's like, we use no seed oils, and it's expensive, but it's damn good for you, and we use grass-fed beef, and mm-hmm. I think that has legs, that type of philosophy, but I don't know if I'm talking about either. So
I would agree with you. I did the whole 30 or whatever years ago, and have done keto since a time or two, and so just on a personal journey, I've zoned in a little bit on some of that through the years.
Hard when you travel.
Is very hard when you travel. Very hard when you travel. It's fun. We've already had this part of the conversation, so I tie that back to approachability. I think you have to be very careful from a concept perspective. But again, think about density. Think about mm-hmm. you have to appeal to a lot of people. Can you do something a little bit more focused like that in a high dense urban area? Sure, that concept, quote unquote, might work there. I mean, look, I love vegan food. That'd be a surprise probably but I absolutely love it. I think vegan food is fantastic. For 15 years, we've looked at every vegan concept in the world. We've had all these smart investors tell us about how this is going to work and vegan and blah, blah, and it's like, we've kind of seen this play out before, and we go watch it play out before. Again, people have a lot of talk about health, but when they sit down, they're looking for an experience. It goes back to that differentiation for us. The differentiation's the experiential in part for us. So, it's ultimately a tipping point of the numbers game. Like when you get to that point where there's enough people somewhere. I think the way you do that is you have, a brand whereby, let's just stay with the health for a moment, whereby those components are very important. And instead of building the entire concept around it, you are able to put it into what you have.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. You have, think about some places you'll see the GF, for, it's a bowl concept. You've got gluten-free option. This one's vegan, and this particular bowl may be 3 or 4 things, but you don't build the whole concept around just that.
Gotcha.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Especially not if you're what you're talking about, if you're not in New York, like where there's densely populated, where there's a lot of people. Like you could probably do a vegan concept in some of these big, densely populated cities, but go try to scale that and put that in Omaha and, Little Rock and whatever.
That's right.
Probably not enough demand.
The difference between talking about restaurants and talking about chains.
Yeah.
Right. Go back to why we make that distinction really early. We can have a conversation about a restaurant that could work in LA and be fantastic and might get a few there. But the difference between having the restaurant conversation and having a chain conversation might be very different.
You know what my new idea is? I moved on from ribs and whiskey.
I was going to say, it's not ribs and whiskey?
No, because I don't drink alcohol anymore.
Oh,
so
I haven't had a lot to drink this summer either.
I didn't have an issue or whatever. Not that is, but I just kind of stopped. The older I got, the more it would affect me, and the more I got tired of not feeling great. So I was just like, so eventually I realized I hadn't had a drink in a long time, and I just kind of stopped. So I can't do ribs and whiskey.
Okay,
I could, because I know there's a lot of Steve Palmer being one of them that, sober and has all these awesome restaurants with great wine and, menus. But I just want to do, I can't. I can't. That's why I don't have the iPhone. I don't have the discipline. If something's a problem for me, I need to not have it around.
I was going to say, I thought you just didn't want to get sued.
My phone was a problem. I couldn't. So I was like, I have to get rid of it, right? So I can't do ribs and whiskey.
All right.
But I want to do meats and sweets. And here's my thing. So my diet now is I'm the opposite of the vegan. I don't eat any vegetables. My foundation is meat, primarily ruminant animals, so mostly cows or game or whatever, and then eggs, cheese, dairy, and then on the top is fruit and honey. So that's my sweets. So meats and sweets. I like
that. Meats and sweets.
That's a movement, man. I'm telling you, there's a lot more. You hear the word. You didn't hear the word carnivore 5 years ago, and now you hear a lot of people I'm trying the carnivore diet. I want to whatever it is. I've been on that for a long time, and I like it a lot. And it's how I roll. And my whole family thinks I'm crazy, but it works really well for me. So I don't eat any of the green shit anymore, man. I never.
That is fascinating.
Never. Just meat and fruit.
Wow. Well, I like fruit. I like
products,
meat. I might be
animal products and fruit. So, I'm telling you,
when you get to 3 or 4 stores, let us know.
Somebody will do that at some point because they'll do it in Austin. You got a lot somewhere
Denver,
like that.
Denver, Austin.
There's places like that where you can get it. Denver, no. I got to tell you, man, you ought to follow up with Dave if you haven't talked to him in a while. He's on a tear right now. The cost of doing business in Denver, Colorado right now. I'll put it this way. Do you know Juan Pedro at Culinary Creative?
I know Culinary Creative, but I don't know Juan.
Juan's their CEO. Brilliant dude. Incredible operator. They're doing great. But Dave told me they were talking last week, and Juan, they're expanding. They were only in Denver and Boulder and all that. Now he's going to Houston. He's going to New Orleans. He told Dave Query that he's opening a restaurant in Manhattan right now, and it costs him less to open a restaurant in Manhattan than it's costing him to open his restaurant in Denver, Colorado right now. I mean, it is a tough environment. So I know there are a lot of great concepts have started out, but man, it's concerning. Their labor's gone up so much, and then they're their tipped minimum wage is $18 an hour. I mean, just they got a lot of problems out there. But
there's That's probably a time for a whole nother podcast. Not just there, but it's fast, and it's also fascinating how people who have growth concepts. There are certain markets that this is kind of part of like our playbook, right? There are certain markets where people just want to go.
Yeah,
it's funny. Denver actually was one of them. Washington D.C. and Denver years ago. Like were
yeah,
right.
I agree.
But years ago we were already like, what are people like? Absolutely not, for various reasons in both situations. And you would talk to a high growth I remember one great high growth concept sold for a huge number. Had a meeting with them, and the management team's like, the next two markets are Washington and Denver. What are you like? Why? They honestly couldn't tell me.
Yeah.
It was just that's where everyone went.
You got to go.
That's where we go.
Yeah.
Well, that business didn't do too well.
Yeah.
They didn't even get to Washington and Denver. It still didn't do too well.
Yeah. Yeah. Tough markets. Yeah. I wouldn't mind. Go to Greenville, South Carolina.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Go to Spartanburg. Like,
money's just as green.
That's right. See, that's good old Eastern North Carolina wisdom right there. Money's just as green. I like those old. My granddad used to say the best wit bought wit. Like sometimes you got to learn your lessons the hard way. But well, I could probably talk to you for another like 2 or 3 hours, but I want to respect your time. And I'm looking at that clock, and I guarantee I've got calls and texts on here because my wife's gonna be killing me because I was supposed to be picking up my son from school. He's good. He'll be doing his homework, but I was so engaged. Like, I can't believe we've talked for over an hour because you're awesome, dude. And I like really am glad we got a chance to hang out. And talk.
Me too. What a great facility. So glad you're, it's so close in Charlotte. Like, and congratulations to you on, everything you've done. So, a lot to be happy. And I love the fact that you are effectively giving back in a way, like you're reinvesting in the industry, in just amazing ways, and that's the hospitality component. Yep. So obviously, if there's anything we can ever do for you, hopefully you wouldn't hesitate to reach out.
Where are you heading tonight?
I have 2 more meetings, and then my partner and I will figure out somewhere to try. We didn't put anything on the actual calendar tonight because there's just enough play. Luckily, we won't have to worry about getting in anywhere tonight.
No, you won't. Have you been in the Crunkleton? Do you know?
Oh yeah. Getting ready to open one in Raleigh.
Yeah. Good place.
Yeah.
Just in the Crunkleton's like right here,
mm-hmm.
and they just opened the Biscuit Belly. Just opened they're like right in the parking lot.
Yep. Got it.
So like tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Good place.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, there's so many good options here now. Do you know the Tony Daniels Supperland and all that?
Man, I've heard such good things about Supperland, and what I'm a big fan of names.
Yeah.
Like names are really important.
I agree.
And that just I have to go on Sunday night for supper.
Yeah.
And it is it just like there without even having. I'll give you a quick example. I know we got to go. We had a junior resource once, an analyst who had just been hired from undergrad. This was years ago, and we went to the original Hop Dottie on South Congress, and I'll never forget. What he said, was just perfect. We had this was all of our first trip to Hop Dottie, and I don't know if that doesn't matter. So we waited in line because you had to wait in line, right? We're inside. And we hadn't even ordered yet. And he says, I'd come back. Now, we hadn't ordered. We haven't eaten. But he was already willing to give it a mulligan. And it worked for him in a way and on a level that he was going to come back anyway. And to be honest with you, the first time I ever heard someone mention Supperland, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go a couple times. Because if it doesn't work, I'm sure for me, that just speaks to me. So
I agree.
I can't wait to try it.
One more thing. Do you know Brett at Sup Dogs?
No, I don't, but everyone loves Sup Dogs.
You need to know Brett.
Yeah.
If you go to go to supdogs.com and click on our story, there's a film, and you will never forget watching that film. And we made it, and it's awesome. But he's had it on. We made it in 2017. It's the backstory about Sup Dogs.
Uh-huh.
His brother started that place, and his brother passed away, and it tells the story of how that happened but I want to connect you with Brett. You should know him because he's a great dude. He's real smart. He runs that business really well. Of course, they're only in Greenville and Chapel Hill. He just started a distillery in Greenville, Crush Distillery, because he was the second largest or third largest buyer of vodka in the state of North Carolina. So he decided to just start his own distillery and make his own vodka.
Yeah.
Super smart dude. But one day, like, I don't think he's not going to take that, I don't think, and try to put that in 200 college towns across the country. But I bet somebody could. It's
special.
Crush it.
Yeah,
They crush it. They have people waiting, like in Chapel Hill, people camp out for the Chapel Hill Duke games. Like, I mean, they literally come to Sup Dogs the day before and camp out. Like, they camp out at Cameron Indoor. They camp out at Sup Dogs just because they want to make sure that they get to watch the game there.
Love it.
That's something special.
That's right. They're coming back.
This is awesome. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
This
so
is great.
much fun.
Really appreciate it.
And that is a wrap, y'all. More episodes coming soon. Keep listening, keep watching. And how do we find you? What's your website?
HARGETT, HargettHunter.com.
HargettHunter.com. And you can go read the backstory about why it's called Hargett Hunter, which is really cool. Thank y'all. See ya.
Thank you.